Hello guys, this is Ark and we are back with another video. LCK 2024 Spring has begun and I have to talk about it. Of course, for the past 2 months or so, there was the league's off season, so no pro play happening or anything like that. Apart from like players moving from one team to another, there wasn't really anything to talk about. So yeah, we're back with the LCK now. The first week of play is underway, and we had the chance to watch every team play at least once. So I think this is like the perfect time to like make a video about power rankings and how I think the spring season will play out. So in terms of format, again, we have the exact same format as last year. So 10 teams, double round robin, so 18 games, 18 like best of threes for every team, and then the top six will qualify. The first round will be 3 to 6 playing, two best of threes, I think, or best of five. I cannot remember. Um, and then it's basically a double elimination bracket. Um, so yeah, pretty much it's the same teams from last year. Leave Sandbox renaming to Fear X. Apart from that, you have your D plus Kia, DRX, Genji, Hanwha Life, Katie, Quantum Freaks, Nongshim, OK Brion, and T1. So in terms of off-season moves from players, I think some of the biggest out there were a lot of them for sure. I think some of the biggest ones are Canyon leaving Damwon and joining Genji. Of course, Canyon has been a big jungler for the past 3 or 4 years now, considered among the best junglers in the world, if not the best jungler in the world. Um, so of course him leaving Damwon, which he was for 4 years or like 5 years now, is a big thing, and joining Genji as well is another big thing. I know a lot of people have been calling for Chovy and Canyon playing on the same team. Both of them are considered you know some of the best, if not the best, in their respective roles. So it's always a treat to watch this. I certainly wanted to see this for a very long time, so I'm quite excited about this. Gen Z also acquired Keen from KT Roster alongside Lehans, who returns to Gen Z from KT as well. So the roster from Gen Z seems quite formidable, and of course the departure of Doran, Peanut, and Delight uh, means that they all went to Hanwha Life here, who joined Zeka and Viper in order to make another seemingly super strong team as well. So in terms of Genji, I think individually, I think they upgraded. Of course, I think Canyon is better than Peanut individually. Again, I think Kin is better than Doran. I think Lehens is not better than Delight, but that's up for discussion. Of course, I think Delight had a breakout year in 2023. Uh, but individually, I think Genji has technically a better roster, but then you have to account for teamwork and all that. I think Genji's teamwork last year was phenomenal, especially the mid jungle duo. Delight was also very strong as a support player. Doran was serviceable. Paige was very good for a rookie. So we have to wait and see how this new Genji lineup, uh, how well they mess up if they do, and we will see their peak, I guess, as the time and year progresses, right? And speaking of Genji and former members, then we have Hanwha Life, of course, where Hanwha Life now has Doran, Peanut, and Delight from Genji alongside Zeka and Viper, and I think this is a very strong team, and I'm not sure, like you can kind of see the Gen G print from last year on this team, jungle, top, and support. Of course, Zeka is a different player than Chovy, Viper is a different player than Paze, of course, and so it's not going to be the same team for sure. And I'm not sure if this Hanwha Life will be better than Gen from last year. We will have to wait and see on that. But I think there's a lot of potential in this team, and I think we will also get to see how good Doran, Peanut, and Delight actually are. Because I think the reason why Genji last year and those three players specifically were so good is because they had first of all a good coaching staff with Score and Musong, right, and Mafa, and because Chovy exists in the mid lane, I think uh, the coaching staff in Chovy actually elevated those players to be uh, better than they are. I mean, Peanut was always great, and Doran was not always great. Delight was kind of a rookie, so to speak. Like his bro season um, exists, but he only played in the top level when he joined SNG. So I think Chovy existing and the coaching staff existing made those players better than they are. And this year in How Alive, with again a different mid laner, a different AD carry, we will have to see how good they are without the help from like the coaching staff, right? Um, I still expect them to do well. Like I think Doran is a very serviceable top laner, and Peanut is always great. Again, as I said, I've been a big fan of Peanut for a long time now, ever since his debut, really, And um, Delight, I think, is a monster. So I think this Hanwha Life team will do well. But if they don't, for some reason, then I guess this speaks a lot about how much of a well-oiled machine Genji was. Moving on, we have Diplaskia, another Titan, another big name for the LCK, who got rid of Kana and got Kingen from Hanwha Life. Of course, with Canyon leaving, they got their challengers, jungler Lucid, and Soulmaker resigned with the team for until 2026. Which is a big move for Soulmaker, and I think Soulmaker now officially becomes, the flag player for D plus Kia, and I think Soulmaker right now for D plus is what Faker is to T1, right? Or players like I don't know, Caps is for G2, for example. They are, when you say Soulmaker, you mean D plus Kia. When you say D plus Kia, you mean Soulmaker, right? It's this, this connection. There is no Damwon without Soulmaker, and there's no Soulmaker without Damwon. Um, they got aiming from KT, and they kept Kellen. Um, and I think this roster is better than last year. Um, Last year's roster, I think Kana was a bit not very good. Personally, I never really liked Kana. Like, for sure, all these players are very good mechanically, but what makes a great pro player is not how mechanically good you are, but how consistent you are and how focused you are in the game. Because if you lose focus for like 10 seconds and you're not where you're supposed to be, you get ganked, you do not react to the play that needs to happen, then your team probably loses a snowball and loses the game, right? I think Kana was not that great of a pro player. Um, so I think Kingen is a definite upgrade. Lucid, I have not watched a lot of challengers, but I know Lucid to be a very good player. Some people say that he's kind of like a new Canyon. And if that's true and ends up being true, then I'm really excited to see what he has to offer. Because this influx of challenger players coming into the LCK, I think, is a very big thing, and the LCK does need new players coming every year. So we had like Pace last year, and even like in 2022 we had like Vikla, right? And I think we need like new players coming up to the main teams, so we can pretty much like sustain all the teams. Um, I think aiming is not necessarily a better AD card than Deft, but I think he has a different play style that I think helps. Damwon a bit more in how they approach games, right? Um, and yeah, I think overall this team is better than last year's Damwon, and I really want to see Damwon be competitive again because the past like 2 years it has not really clicked, and I think a lot of their success will depend upon how well Soulmaker does and how motivated and driven he is, because it's a known fact. It's, himself said that he was kind of burned out. He lost motivation to play and to compete, right? But this year, as he says that it's a different environment now, different players, like the iconic duo of Soulmaker and Canyon. You know, when you said the name of one, you would probably think of the other, but now that's broken up. And as sad as it makes me that this duo has broken up now, I think it can work better for both of them. Like maybe a change of pace and a change of like scenery and all that is what those players need to become what they once were, right? So I think Soulmaker will be better this year. I think Canyon will be better this year, and I'm happy for it. Now for DRX, of course, Barry left. Barry left, went to KT. And they changed pretty much all their roster apart from Rascal in the top lane. They got Teddy in the AD carry position, and then they got their challenger players Sponge, Seitab, and Pliada. Pliada was there as an AD carry last year, but support is his natural position, right? So regarding DRX, I think I want to see this roster succeed. Firstly, because I enjoy both Rascal and Teddy, and secondly, because I want to see challenger players prove that they are good, kind of like Lucid, for example, right? But I cannot see this team going anywhere. And the main thing about that is that the crucial players in every team are mid laner, jungler, and support. Those those roles are the roles that decide the game. They decide what tempo you take, how much control you have on the map, how well you control the map. All those things are from the jungler, the mid laner, and the support, right? And in those three roles, they have the rookie players, right? And they have the big names technically in like top and AD carry, I consider to be like the weakest roles in pro play. So because of that, I do not think DRX will do well. Um, then we have FearX, of course, rebranded from Live Sandbox, who kept Wheeler, kept Closer, and then Teddy left again for DRX, and they got Henna from Bro. They got Execute, who I think was their challenger support, and Clear was with the team last year as well. Of course, no more Dove, right? Um, Whenever I see players like Closer and Wheeler, like I know they are good players. Mechanically, they are good. They can carry games. They can win lanes, even against like the top of the top. But the problem is consistency, right? And like for how good Closer might be or how like good Wheeler might be, they're not consistent. And in my mind, those players and those teams with these players will forever be like a fifth to sixth place team, in my opinion, maybe even lower. Um, like it's not nice to say that, but that's how I feel about those players. Like those players cannot really break the ceiling, right? They cannot reach, the status of like BDD, Soulmaker, Faker, Chovy, Zeka, even. I do not think those players can break that ceiling and reach, the top of the top. So I think FearX, Henna is a good AD carry, but I cannot see how Live Sandbox can like I mean, they can make playoffs, but I cannot see how they can like win against teams like T1 or Gen.G or Hanwha Life, right? Um, Katie Rolster, I think, made some very interesting changes. Of course, they got Piosik, Deft, and Beryl back. Deft got Deft back, and Piosik, Deft, and Beryl are back together again. Of course, the DRX 2022 World Champion roster. Having BDD in the mid lane, of course, from last year, and Perfect, their challengers top laner. I think this is a very underrated roster, and I think this is like the dark horse type of roster because BDD, I think, is one of the greatest mid laners of all time. Deft, self-explanatory. Beryl is like 2 times world champion, one more time being a finalist. Um, Piosik is, you know, very good sometimes, kind of questionable some other times, but there's a lot of hype for Perfect as well. They say that he's a very good top laner, so I'm waiting to see that. Um, I think this team is, um, first of all, I think the coaching staff of Katie is very, very good. Um, but I think all of those players, no matter how good they are, um, I feel something is missing, you know? For how good BDD is, for how good Beryl or Deft or like Piosik is, I feel something is missing from this roster to make it, reliable, right? For example, last year you had Lehens, right? Lehens is a guy that can take like a mediocre roster and make it something bigger than it is. Not necessarily through his play, but through his personality, right? I think this Katie roster is missing this X factor, I think, and I think that will be the reason why it is gated to become like a top contender. I still expect like some good things from KT, but I think uh, they are not in the favorites to win the entire thing, which is the main point. Um, and then we have Condon Freaks. Pretty much the same roster as last year. Of course, the addition of Cuz from KT. Um, I think Kwandong is or will be the same as last year. Um, Again, it's kind of like the same thing with Fear X or believe Sandbox, and I think this ties in with Bro as well. Again, these are teams that they can be good on paper sometimes. They can beat even like upset like higher power teams, but they're not consistent. Like some things their plays will work out, some other times they won't, and that is what makes a team good or makes a team bad. How consistent and how successful they are with their main game plan, right? It's the same for Bro, same for Quantum Freaks, same for Noxium actually. Um, Nongshim pretty much kept their same roster with Cole Me coming up from Academy, from Challengers. Um, Again, I'm not sure like what you would expect from such a roster like Red Force, Brion, Kwandong, and uh, FearX, or even DRX, right? Like you can see that there is a clear bottom five in those five teams, and then there is a clear top five in D plus, KT, Genji, Hanwha Life, and T1. T1, of course, kept the same roster. I think T1 re-signed all their players after, like the day after they won Worlds, which I love. I really like that. You pretty much instantly reward your team and your players for winning. I think this is very, very great, and not just for T1 and their fans, but also for stability in the pro play scene, right? Because a lot of the time, there's not a lot of stability. There's not a lot of certainty on, salaries and where am I gonna end up next year, and players, being like hot potato every year between different teams. The fact that T1 has kept the same roster for like 3 years now, I think is very good for the scene, and I really hope that the same happens with more teams. Like I enjoy how D Plus has Soulmaker for like so many years now. I like that like Chovy stayed with Genji for like the third year now. So, like Lehan's coming back. Like I really like that, and I think this should be happening more often, so that the players can feel a bit of like safety, some you know, being a bit more consistent in their teams. Like, and I also think this makes it so that most fans watching are, I think, more of a fan of a certain player, and because they support that certain player, they support the team as well, right? But when like every player like changes teams every year or so, the team itself does not gain any supporters, right? Like the player has their supporters, but the team doesn't. And I think by having certain players stay with a certain team for a long time, you then become a fan of the said team. For example, if you liked Showmaker, you are instantly a fan of D plus Gear as well now. Even if Showmaker leaves, you're still a fan of D plus now, right? Same for T1, like you're a fan of Faker, right? Now, if even if Faker leaves, you probably are a fan of T1 as well, right? But like Genji and Chovy, for example, it could be the same thing. Maybe Hanwha Life with Zeka might be the same thing, right? Um, so I like the fact that T1 kept their roster for another year. Um, of course, they added Koma as their coach. And speaking of coaches, Genji also got Mata, Kim, and Helper, who I think the coaching staff from last year on Genji was better, but I think I expect good things from this coaching staff as well. So I guess we will wait and see. Now, in terms of power ranking, I think again, as I said, I think there's a clear bottom five um, with DRX, Kwangdong, Nongshim, Brion, and FearX. But of course, out of those five teams, one of them will make playoffs, and in my opinion, I think the playoff team will be either DRX or it will be FearX. I think either of those two teams will make playoffs and will join the other five: D plus, Genji, Hanwha Life, T1, and KT. Now, regarding the top five, um, I think um, I think based on past history, I have to say that Genji and T1 are the clear two top teams. I also would rate Genji a better team than T1. Not at the moment, but towards the end of the split, I think Genji will once again be the clear favorite over T1. And then you have Hanwha Life, who on paper there should be a discussion for like top three instead of top two. So theoretically, uh, we should be thinking that, you know what, it's a top three, like Hanwha, Genji, and T1, right? And then it's like D plus, and then it's like KT. Um, I'm not ready yet to put Hanwha in like a top three discussion with Genji and T1. So in my opinion, I think it's Genji number one, T1 number two. Uh, then it's like Hanwha Life in a separate number three spot. Then it's D plus in a separate fourth spot, and then it's KT in their own fifth spot, right? Um, I think this is the power ranking, and based on that, we can go and see some of the results of the first week, of the first 3 days actually. And we opened up with DRX versus Nongshim, so this was a battle of two of the bottom five teams, and if any of those teams want to have any chance of like advancing to like the playoffs, they need to be winning games like this. They need to be winning as many of the games against their direct opposition, and those games that are actually possible to win, right? So in the DRX versus Noxim game, it was a 2-0 for Noxim, but DRX was actually quite good in the early game against Noxim. They had leads in both early games. They actually did very, very well in like moving around the map, securing objectives, getting the early kills. Uh, that happened in both games for DRX, but then they seemed kind of lost during the mid to late game transition, which is why again I said that DRX with this roster, the main the main roles, the main parts of the team that actually do like most of the shot calling or the moving around the map are the challenger players, and I believe that's why DRX didn't know what to do after like 20 minutes into the game, and that's why they lost against Nongshim. Nongshim, who kept the same roster as last year, so I could expect them to become a bit better with more synergy and all that, and Noxim took a 2-0 against DRX, which for them is a big thing. And of course, the same day we had the rematch of the finals, Genji versus T1. Um, as a Genji fan, I was pretty sure that this would be a win for T1. Not necessarily an easy one, but I thought it would be a win for T1 because Genji is a new roster and T1 kept the same roster from the World's Championship win, and because of the momentum and yada yada yada, I thought T1 would win. It turns out T1 wins the first game, but Genji wins the next two games, so Genji is a winner. Um, I was surprised by this, but at the same time, I wasn't because like people can call me like a T1 hater or whatever. I don't care really. I'm not, but I don't care either way. Um, I think Genji is always better than T1. Genji was better in 2022, better in 2023, and I think Genji will be better in 2024. I thought that because the roster is new, that it will take some time for the team to like come together, and because of that, T1 might be able to get a win over them early in the season, right? Kind of what happened like last year, right? But as the season progresses, I'm pretty confident that Genji would mess up quite well, and they would actually become the best team in the LCK again. It turns out that Genji beating T1 here, first of all, it gives Genji a lot more time um, to practice um, and and glue together and all that. So I think this is a big win for Genji and a big loss for T1. Um, it doesn't really mean a lot for standings in terms of like who's gonna make playoffs and all that. I mean, even if Genji or T1 like end up at like third place or fourth place, I think they should be beating, the sixth place team. So it's not that big of a deal. Um, but as a Genji fan, I like to know that we beat one of the best teams in the world on our first game, basically. Um, so yeah, I expect great things from Genji this year as well. I expect Genji to win the LCK again. If they do, Genji will have won 4 LCK titles in a row, which would be an LCK record. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think T1, this is a loss that can be excused. It's a new season, new meta. Um, like they only had like what 1 week to practice, so it's not the end of the world. Like this doesn't really mean anything for T1. I think T1 will just bounce back, and they did. They played against Kwangdong and they won 2-0 with I think was pretty confident and comfortable win as well. So yeah, the loss to Genji doesn't really mean a lot, I think, and when the meta like becomes a bit stale and settles down and all teams have reached their like normal level of power, I think this would be kind of like a different series. But I still think Genji is a better team overall, and I still think that Genji will be the favorite to win the LCK. Now, of course, we had Bro versus Damwon. Of course, Bro has always been known as Damwon's kryptonite. Uh, of course, this kind of like Damwon got over that like last year, and this year they also started with a 2-0 over Bro. Um, New roster looked quite good. Um, I enjoyed the new roster. Some mistakes here and there from like Lucid, right? Like being over aggressive, right? But of course, these are things that with more experience in the LCK, he will become better and minimize his mistakes. Overall, a good showing from Damwon, and I'm expecting like good things from them. Of course, they played against Bro, like not the fiercest of opposition, so we will have to wait and see what happens later on the last day of the last match of the week, where they face off against KT. Now, KT, of course, faced Fear X, and they also won 2-0, as expected. They looked quite comfortable and confident as well, same as Damwon, same as T1 over Kwangdong. And it's the same for like Hanwha Life and DRX. Like if Hanwha Life beat DRX 2-0, um, so this week of play is either apart from like Gen GT1 and Dam1 versus KT, it's like either a strong team facing off against a weaker team, or like weaker teams playing against each other, right? So you would expect a lot of like 2-0s for the favorites, and that's what happened. Dam1 beat Bro, KT beat FearX, Hanwha Life beat DRX 2-0, all of them. And then you had like Nongshim beating DRX 2-0, and then we also had the Genji T1 where Genji won 2-1, and T1 also beat Kwangdong again at 2-0, right? So stronger team beating the weaker team. Um, in Because of that, the first week of play is not really telling us a lot because those results are the ones that you should be expecting, and you cannot really measure the power level between like the top teams, right? We got a glimpse of Genji in versus T1. We will get a Damwon versus KT matchup at the end of the week to see what happens there. But apart from that, there isn't really a lot to gain from this week, right? Um, the only bad thing is DRX losing both games. I mean, the Hanwha Life game you kind of expected to lose, but they also lost to Nongshim. So DRX starts off with a 0-2, which is quite unfortunate. Rascal being in an average team once again this year. Uh, it's tough, but what can you do, right? So tomorrow or today, we will have Bro versus VRX. Of course, both of those teams at 0-1, so one of them will get their first win, the other one will get their two losses and match the Iraqs. So from the first week of play, we will have two teams with a guaranteed 0-2 score line, um, which is not a good start, of course. And We will also have Nongshim versus Genji. Of course, you expect a 2-0 from the Genji. And then on Sunday, we have Kwangdong versus Hanwha Life, which again, you'd expect a 2-0 from Hanwha Life. Then the Damwon versus KT. Now, Damwon versus KT, I think, would be a close series. It could be a 2-0, but by no means will there ever be like easy wins. I think Damwon has a very, very slight edge, but I can see KT winning because they can abuse, Lucid, and maybe um, she will be forced into some like rookie mistakes, and yeah. But I still think Damwon can take this. So yeah, like the first week of the LCK seems quite quiet, I would say. Like not any big matches apart from like again the Genji versus T1 and the Damwon versus KT. We don't really have any other big match. Um, Kind of like getting a feeling out for the patch, for the new meta, for the new rosters, etc. Um, so yeah, I think this is all I want to talk about in this video. Um, by the end of the week, of course, I will make a recap of all the games again and talk about what to expect in week two. Until then, take care, and I'll see you next time.